It's a curious thing. Most people think that faith means believing in something. That to have faith, you must hold firmly to certain ideas, certain dogmas, certain statements about God, the universe, and your place in it. But I want to suggest to you that this is precisely not what faith is. In fact, the person who clings most tightly to belief may have the least faith of all. Faith is not clinging. It is not holding on. It is not gripping desperately to ideas like a man drowning, trying to clutch the water as if it was solid. Faith is letting go. When you swim, you don't grab hold of the water. You trust yourself to it. You float because you relax. You let the water support you. And the moment you stiffen, the moment you panic and try to grasp it, you sink. So too with faith. Faith is a state of openness, of trust in the process of life itself, of being carried by something vast, something immeasurable, something you cannot grasp or even define. But this is a frightening prospect for many. The mind desires security, and belief provides that. Belief wraps reality into tidy packages, gives names to the nameless, explanations to the inexplicable. But true faith, the faith that the great mystics speak of, begins where belief ends. It arises when we surrender the need to define, to control, to explain, and instead rest in the infinite mystery of what is. And so, let us walk together into this mystery, not to accumulate more beliefs, but perhaps to finally let them go. You see, what we are speaking about here is not merely a set of ideas, not a philosophy to be adopted, or a system of doctrines to be believed in. It is rather an experience, or more precisely, experiencing. Faith is something that operates deep in your being, in your bones, as it were, not simply in your mind. It's not an opinion you hold. It's not a conclusion you've reached. It's a way of being, of relating to the world. And curiously, much of Western religion has inverted this. In many traditions, particularly Christianity as it developed, enormous emphasis has been placed on correct belief. Do you accept the right dogmas, the right doctrines? Are you saying the right words about God? Because you are saved, not by works, but by faith. Yet ironically, that faith has often been reduced to mere belief, the mental acceptance of certain statements as true. But belief, in this sense, is fragile. It must be defended. It is always in danger of being contradicted, disproven, challenged. That is why belief often leads to fanaticism. Because it clings so tightly to its ideas, it fears anything that might threaten. Faith, on the other hand, needs no defense. The one who truly has faith can afford to be open, flexible, even playful, because they trust the underlying process of life itself without needing to seize it in the net of concepts. To have faith is like falling backwards into infinite space, trusting that you will be caught, though you cannot see by whom or by what. Now, if faith is openness, if it is trust in the unfolding of life, then what about knowing God? That too has been gravely misunderstood. In many religious traditions, particularly in Christianity, they tell us that God can never truly be known, that the infinite cannot be grasped by the finite mind, that God, being ultimate, resists every attempt to capture him with thought. And yet, at the very same time, much energy has been spent debating what to believe about God. Endless arguments, councils, creeds, and declarations. Do you believe in the Trinity? Do you believe in the Incarnation? Do you believe in the virgin birth? But these are beliefs about God, not God. Very early on, the Christian church rejected the movement called Gnosticism, a path that emphasized gnosis, or direct experiential knowledge of the divine. The Gnostics spoke of three types of people: the pneumatic, the spiritual ones; the psychic, the soul-centered ones; and the material ones concerned only with the world of things. Orthodox Christianity rejected this classification. Rightly so, perhaps, for spirit and matter need not be enemies. After all, the central miracle of Christianity is the incarnation, that God became flesh, the infinite took form, the divine entered the world of the material. As St. Athanasius said, God became man, that man might become God. And yet, you rarely hear that in church today. For many, the focus remains not on experiencing the divine directly, but on adhering to correct ideas about the divine. And this, you see, is the great tragedy of confusing belief with faith. In the mystical tradition, especially among Christian Neoplatonists, there is a beautiful paradox. The highest knowledge of God is a kind of unknowing. They called it agnosia, not ignorance, as we might assume, but a special kind of knowledge through unknowing. Dionysius the Areopagite, that mysterious figure of early Christian mysticism, taught that God is best known by stripping away all that we think we know. This is the path of negative theology, divia negativa. God is not one. Not even unity captures him. God is not spirit, not mind, not justice, not even love. For all these concepts fall short. The more you try to define God, the further away you move. For any concept, any image is less than God. If you see something and say, this is God, you have only seen a creature of God, an angel perhaps, but not God himself. The cloud of unknowing, as one medieval mystic called it, is where true faith lives. It is not a blankness. It is not a void. It is not the absence of thought, a sense of mere emptiness. No, it is a fullness, too vast for any single thought to contain. And here the traditions of East and West meet, for the Hindus call this Nana, the same as Gnosis. The sages of India speak of it as neti, neti, not this, stripping away all concepts until only the mystery remains. In unknowing, we fall back into the infinite, not grasping, surrendering. Not seeing God as an object, but as the very ground of all seeing. You see, when you explore deeply enough, the boundaries between traditions begin to dissolve. The Christians speak of the cloud of unknowing. The Hindus say neti neti, not this, not that. The Buddhists speak of sunyata, the great void, but all point toward the same mystery. The highest realization is not to escape the world, not to shut down the senses, not to sit in catatonic blankness. That is a profound misunderstanding. In some traditions, people imagine that enlightenment means sitting unmoving, deaf and blind to the world like a stone, as if ultimate wisdom were the absence of life itself. But no, the Chinese Zen master Huineng warned against this very error. To confuse emptiness with nothingness is to miss the point entirely. True emptiness, true sunyata, is not a void that excludes, but a space that includes all things without being stained by any of them. Space contains all stars, planets, and galaxies, yet remains perfectly empty. You cannot hammer a nail into space. You cannot spit on the sky and soil it. Your mind, your true nature, is like that space. It contains every thought, every feeling, every moment, but remains unstained. The Hindus call the ultimate state Nirvikalpa Samadhi, non-conceptual awareness. But this does not mean blankness. It means awareness, free from the chains of concepts, an openness so vast that nothing is excluded and nothing clings. This is not the emptiness of death. It is the fullness of life overflowing. And so we come to what may be the most beautiful paradox of all. The highest state of consciousness is not one that withdraws from life, but one that fully embraces it. If nirvana and samsara are truly one, as the Buddhists say, then the awakened one does not flee the world, but lives deeply within it. The Bodhisattva, the ideal figure of Mahayana Buddhism, is not wrapped in a trance, not hovering in some otherworldly bliss. No, he is here, fully present, fully engaged, moving through the world with the grace that comes from knowing there is nothing to fear. The spirit becomes flesh. The word becomes life. The infinite expresses itself through the finite. You see, if the highest reality were some exclusive state, some frozen, silent void, it would contradict itself. For what is truly infinite must leave nothing outside. The non-dual contains all opposites. It is not one, for one excludes many. It is not nothing, for nothing excludes something. It simply is, boundless, measureless, whole. Like space, no edge, no outside, no division. You may even glimpse it in the curious shape of a Klein bottle, a three-dimensional Mobius strip whose inside is outside and whose outside is inside. A surface that transcends our usual categories of inner and outer. This is how reality truly is. Seamless, continuous, undivided. The highest realization is not to escape life, but to see that you were never separate from it at all. Now you might ask, if the awakened one lives fully in the world, why do we speak so often of meditation? Why retreat? Why sit? Why the discipline? The practice? Meditation, you see, is not the goal. It is a medicine, not a diet. When you wish to open a door, you may pick up a brick to knock, but you do not carry the brick into the house. When you wish to cross a river, you build a raft, but you do not haul the raft on your back once you've reached the other shore. And yet, many become attached to the practices themselves. They confuse the raft for the destination. They turn the doorway into a revolving door, endlessly circling, never passing through. They say, what a marvelous experience this meditation is. They become fascinated by the spinning, by the discipline itself, forgetting entirely that the whole point was to walk through into life itself. Spiritual practice can become a subtle form of spiritual vanity, a kind of religious one-upping. I meditate longer than you. I am more disciplined than you. I have experienced higher states than you. Be very careful of this. The purpose of meditation is to prepare the mind to release its grasping, to see through the illusion of separation, and finally to drop even the meditation itself. The awakened one walks freely, neither clinging to practices nor rejecting them, for he has seen that all tools are temporary. What matters is not the method, but the surrender. And now we arrive at the delightful heart of the matter. True faith is not grim, not serious in the sense of rigid solemnity. It is not a heavy burden to carry, It is rather a dance, a play, a cosmic joke of sorts. For you see, all the doctrines, all the beliefs, all the elaborate structures of theology, they are fingers pointing at the moon. And the tragedy is that people often stare at the finger, worship the finger, argue about the shape of the finger, and never see the moon. The one who truly has faith can laugh, because he knows deeply, viscerally, that he is not in control. He has let go of grasping. He falls backwards into infinite space, not knowing, not needing to know, but trusting utterly that the process of existence will catch him. In Zen they say, be kind to the crazy ones, for their souls are already with God. And perhaps in a certain sense, true faith is a kind of holy madness, the willingness to surrender control, to abandon certainty, to rejoice in not knowing. You see, there is a great secret game in spiritual circles, the game of seriousness, the game of importance, the game of being more enlightened than thou. A parasite is someone who keeps going through the revolving door, but only because someone else keeps giving it a push. But the one who walks right through, who leaves the door behind, who steps into the great mystery without the need to carry any tools, any labels, any beliefs, that one is free. That one is truly alive. And so, in the end, what is faith? It is not belief. It is not doctrine. It is not the fevered clinging to ideas that make us feel secure. Faith is surrender. It is the courage to release your grasp on life, to stop clutching, stop resisting, and simply allow. To trust the flow of existence the way you trust the water when you float, knowing it will carry you, though you cannot command it. To live in faith is to fall backwards into the arms of God. Arms you cannot see, cannot define, cannot control, but which you know are always there. It is to awaken in the morning, no guarantee, no certainty, no assurance of what tomorrow will bring, and yet to breathe, to smile, to walk forward, knowing that you are already home. The great mystery is not something to be solved, it is something to be lived. You do not solve music. You play it, you dance with it, and so it is with life. Faith is not about having the answers, it is about being at peace without them. In the words of an old Zen master, when you walk, just walk. When you sit, just sit. Above all, don't wobble. That is faith. The Upanishads say, if you think you understand Brahman, you do not understand. But if you know that you do not understand, then you truly understand. Because the Godhead, the eternal self, is never an object of its own knowledge. Just as a knife can't cut itself, fire doesn't burn itself, and light doesn't illuminate itself, you cannot grasp yourself. And if you think you've done it, you've only grasped a reflection. This is the great mystery. The thing that you're looking for is what's looking so naturally you can't find it. You can't pin it down. Fire doesn't burn itself. Light doesn't shine on itself. You can't see your own eyes without a mirror. So you say, I don't know. And in that, something deeper listens. And so, in that moment of truly not knowing of, letting go of all your mental grasping you are, in a sense, finally at peace with the mystery. And in that, curiously enough, something deeper listening. Here's the strange thing. When you stop holding on so tightly, you begin to feel stronger. Most of us are constantly using energy to manage everything, to plan, to worry, to make sure things go exactly our way. And it's exhausting. We're trying to control life, as if we're running the whole show. But the moment you stop clinging, stop defending, stop trying to force things, you free up that energy, and it doesn't disappear. It returns to you. That's the paradox. You gain real power by letting go of control. Not by giving up, but by trusting the Tao, the way of things. It flows. It moves to the left and to the right. It supports all things without needing to dominate them. And when it accomplishes something, it doesn't take credit. It doesn't boast. It just moves on. That's the kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself. The more you trust, the more power you actually have. Not over others, but with life. And so strangely, when you let go, you don't lose anything. You gain alignment. You flow with something much larger, something that's been holding you the entire time. Letting go isn't weakness. It's intelligence. The way to become one with the universe is not by trying to control it. That only disturbs it, makes it feel like something outside you, something you have to conquer. And the more you try to conquer it, the more it slips away. You make it feel separate, foreign, something to be managed. But when you begin to trust it like you would trust another person, something shifts. You say, let's see what you're going to do. And in doing that, you're not just speaking to the universe out there, you're speaking to yourself. Because ultimately, you don't know where your decisions come from. They just appear. Like hiccups. They bubble up from the depths. This is the strange thing about trust. It looks like a risk, but it turns out to be a return to how things already work. You trust your heart to beat. You trust your nervous system to wake you in the morning. You can even say, I want to wake up at 6 o'clock. More often than not, you do. As if something in you knows, even though you don't. That's the principle. Let the world move as it does, and you begin to move with it. When we decide, we worry. Did I think about it long enough? Did I take in all the facts? Did I overlook something? But the truth is, you never can consider all the data. In any situation, the number of variables is infinite. You think you've worked it all out, but you haven't. So what you do is go through the motions. You weigh this and that, and then when the moment comes, you make a snap judgment. It pops out almost by itself. Sometimes you get the vague outline of things. Sometimes you make a good decision on rational grounds. But more often than not, you forget all the variables that could have gone wrong. And somehow, it works. That's the mystery. The problem isn't making decisions. The problem is thinking you can make them perfectly. Like the man sorting potatoes. Chopping wood was fine. Fixing fences was fine. But sorting potatoes into pile, sell, seed, discard was too much. Decision after decision after decision. That's the weight we carry. And it's unnecessary. The more you try to decide with total certainty, the more anxious you become. But when you let go a little, something deeper takes over. Something that already knows. Very great business people are not the ones who try to control every detail. They are the ones who delegate authority, who trust others to act. And in doing so, they create something that works like a living organism. Not a machine, not a dictatorship, a body. Because life itself functions this way. Constant delegation. Trust at every level. Cells don't report back to central headquarters. They act. And in acting, they cooperate in a system far more intelligent than any one part could understand. Evolution itself depends on this. Constant adaptation, mutual participation, kind of unconscious wisdom. This is why democracy is superior to monarchy. Not because it's always right, but because it allows for that synergize the intelligence of a complex system made of individuals who don't fully know what's going on, but who together form something that works. That's the pattern of nature. That's how intelligence spreads not by force, but by participation. When you let go of control and trust others, you're not weakening your position. You're entering into the same dynamic that drives life forward. To trust is not to be naive. It is to be aligned with the very structure of existence. When you move with the flow, life begins to cooperate. There's a story of the Kon-Tiki expedition. A man builds a raft from balsa wood to sail from South America across the Pacific. It's an experiment, a leap of faith. He sets it in motion and soon discovers all sorts of unexpected things working in his favor. When the wood got wet, it swelled and the ropes bit into it, locking everything tightly. He hadn't planned that. Flying fish landed on the deck each morning, breakfast delivered. He had touched the key. He wasn't struggling against nature. He wasn't trying to force anything. He was cooperating with the larger movement, aligning with something older, deeper, and more intelligent than any personal plan. And the astonishing thing was how many things went right, how much unseen help arrived. Because when you stop resisting the current, when you stop trying to dominate the ocean, you find it already knows where to take you. You're not in charge. You're part of something vast. And the more you let that be true, the more everything starts to work. Not always the way you expect it, but the way it needs to. It has become practical politics now, not just virtue, not self-sacrifice, but necessity to let go of control. In earlier times, people spoke of utopia as a dream, but now it is urgent. Because if we don't learn how to enjoy ourselves, we will destroy ourselves. In an age of leisure, people must know how to be at ease. If not, we'll smash the whole future of the human race in boredom, anxiety, and endless bickering. It's happening already. Everyone picking a new scapegoat, each side blaming the other, and yet none of it is relevant. Because the root isn't left or right, good or bad, us or them. The root is fear, the fear of letting go, the fear of trusting what we don't control. And so the paradox, you must learn to enjoy yourself. You must risk following what brings life. Not in a selfish sense, but because that's how intelligence works. That's how it always has. You don't need to fight to be good. You need to relax enough to remember what you are. If we don't learn how to enjoy life with depth and sincerity, we'll go on tearing each other up at each side, convinced it's saving the world. So we come back to the question, what do I want? And the honest answer, most of us, is I don't know. And that not knowing, if you stay with it, is the beginning of something extraordinary. Because when you really stop to ask, not from the surface of the mind, but from the depths, the answers you once thought were true begin to fade. First, you name things. I think I'd like this or that. I want comfort, I want love, I want security. And those may satisfy you. Then you look again, and you say, no, I don't think that's quite it either. And finally you arrive at silence. Why don't you know what you want? Two reasons. One, you already have it. Two, you can never truly see yourself. You are the source of wanting, and a knife cannot cut itself. A flame cannot burn itself. You cannot grasp what you are. And in that mystery, something else stirs. What I want is what you want, and I don't know what you want. Surprise me. That's the link. That's the kinship between I and thou. Everything is falling apart. Not just you, not just your plans. Everything. We are in constant dissolution. Every structure, every hope, every tower. The world men set their hearts upon turns to ash, or if it prospers, it vanishes like snow upon desert sand. All of it fades, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the great globe itself will dissolve. And like an insubstantial pageant, leave not a rack behind. You see, this isn't something to fear, it's liberation. You don't have to let go. because there is nothing to hold. Nature is already letting go for you. And that, curiously, is the great helper. When you stop resisting the inevitable, when you stop pretending permanence exists, you stop struggling, you stop grasping, and then something else shows up. A power you didn't create. An energy that isn't yours, yet flows through you. It had been hidden behind your efforts to control, but now it's free, and so are you. Anytime you let go of control, truly let go, you find a curious thing. You begin to have access to power, but not the kind of power that comes from force, not the kind that manipulates or resists. This is something altogether different. It is energy that arises when you are no longer wasting yourself on self-defense, when you are no longer holding up the illusion of control. Most people are constantly trying to manage things, trying to push the world around, to bend it to their will. And that takes effort, constant strain. It burns energy. But the moment you stop trying to act like you are God, the moment you begin to trust that the world moves on its own, something shifts. The energy that was tied up in fear and resistance becomes available. You have not added anything new. You have simply stopped holding it back. This is why the principle is always the same. The more you give it away, the more it comes back. Not because of some moral law, but because that is how things work. That is the rhythm. The energy that flows in that way is not yours. And yet, it moves through you completely. What we have been talking about is not a belief system. It is not a set of doctrines or dogmas. It is something much closer to an experience. It is not what you think, but what you feel, or both. Now, this is very different from the emphasis of Western. The Western tradition, especially Christianity, has placed enormous weight on belief. Do you believe the right things? Do you hold the correct views? Faith, they say, is what saves you. Not action, not understanding, but faith in the proper doctrines. And early on, the Christian church rejected another kind of path, the path of knowing, what was called gnosis. Not belief, but knowledge gained through direct experience. Gnostics said there were three kinds of people: the spiritual, the psychological, and the wooden. And the wooden were those most entangled in materiality, those who identified completely with the body. Orthodox Christianity rejected this idea, and perhaps for good reason, because matter is not the enemy of spirit. In the center of the Christian mystery is incarnation, that God became flesh, that the divine entered matter, but somewhere along the way, that insight was lost, and belief took its place. There was a strange monk once, writing under the name Dionysius the Areopagite. He taught something very different from the usual theology. He spoke of knowing God not through definitions, but through unknowing, through a kind of dark knowledge, a cloud of forgetting, a cloud of unknowing. This is not ignorance. It is not confusion. It is the deep intuition that whatever you say about the divine, it is not quite that. If you call it love, you miss. If you call it unity, you miss again. Every word falls short. In one of his small writings, the Theologia Mystica, Dionysius moves through a series of negations. God is not spirit, not mind, not justice, not light, not even one. He says that if anyone, having seen God, understood what they had seen, then what they saw was not God. It was something less. Some creature, perhaps an angel, but not the source. And here he was echoing something much older, something you also find in the Upanishads. The idea that the highest truth is not what can be spoken, but what remains when all speaking stops. When you know that you do not know, that is when you begin to understand. So in the end, to not know is to be open. To let go is not a loss. It is a return. You fall into the rhythm of things. You stop struggling against the current. You begin to trust what you do not understand. And then the universe begins to move with you. Not because you've figured it out, not because you've mastered some technique, but because you've stopped pretending to be separate. You've stopped trying to possess life, and instead you let life pass you. The energy that comes when you give up control is not yours. It is not personal, but it is generous. It is full. It comes when you no longer need it. And that is the final mystery. The universe will give you what you want, but only when you no longer clutch at it. Only when you stop trying to force it to answer your will. It responds to trust. It answers presence. When you truly do not know, when you no longer grasp, the world opens itself to you. And in that moment, you are not a stranger in the cosmos. You are home.